Welcome back to episode 4 of the Rear Ring Report. I am Steve, and with me, as always, is Ryan. Ryan, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great, Steve. Howdy, everybody. Thanks for listening and tuning in. How are you, Steve?
Amen. I am doing better than the grass in Suzuka. Rumor has it is still on fire.
Did you hear Liam Lawson's radio com? He's like, the grass, the fire, it's so big.
I was sitting there and I was like, this seems so silly that they're stopping the entire thing just to go spray some grass. Like, what's going to happen? But I think better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
And you probably don't want all of Japan to burn down. So,
No.
Just kind of an interesting little respite to qualifying today.
Yeah.
But that's what we're here to talk about. We're talking about qualifying. Our starting grid, you're going to go over in just a second. But obviously, we have to do the Logan Sargent Memorial Last Place Award goes to Lance Stroll, taking up 20th position. So, Ryan, can you give us the rest of the starting grid?
I sure can. So our starting grid is Max Verstappen starting in first, Lando Norris in second, Oscar Piastri in third, Charles Leclerc in fourth, Russell fifth, Antonelli sixth, Hadjar seventh, Hamilton 8th, Albon 9, Behrman 10, Gasly 11, Sainz qualifies 12th, Alonso 13th, Lawson 14th, Tsunoda 15th, Hulkenberg 17th, 18th, 19th, nope, 16th, Portoletto, Aachen, Doohan, Stroll. I got to get rid of those numbers. It was too much for my small brain to handle. However, we did have a slight mishap in the world of qualifying with one of my favorite drivers, Carlos Sainz, who was given a 3-place grid penalty for impeding the lap time of a young Sir Lewis Hamilton. So we now move from Behrman to 10, Gasly to 11, Alonso to 12, Lawson at 13, Tsunoda at 14th. Carlos Sainz is now going to be starting P15 on the grid.
I think he just wanted to get a good position to watch the battle that everybody's interested in, which is Lawson versus Tsunoda.
Yeah, front row seat.
Yeah. So what did you think about Lawson versus Tsunoda there?
It was interesting. I think they both have their two reasons as to how this played out. I think Liam putting that on P14 is a better result than his short stint with the Red Bull car. However, you gotta mention his teammate Isaac Hadjar. He's qualifying P7. So what were your overall thoughts about how he kind of compares to his teammate? Then we can kind of talk about how he compares to Yuki and kind of talk about Yuki's situation.
Yeah, I think that overall, he's got to be at least relieved that he made it out of FP1, right? And he found a little bit more pace in FP2, and he seemed like he had a pretty good lap. There wasn't any massive snaps of the wheel or anything like that, but overall, he's just still not on the pace. And he goes to the car that it seems like everybody believes is easier to drive over the course of one lap and is faster over the course of one lap. And he's still just not performing where he needs to. Hopefully, it's just getting used to the car and figuring out exactly where he can push, what he needs to do differently. But it can't be the start he was looking for. It wasn't what I was expecting of him. Going into it, I had actually thought he was going to qualify in the top 10 just due to the performance of that car from Yuki and Isaac Hadjar previously. And I think he's got to walk away being pretty disappointed.
Yeah, and for Yuki's sake, right now Yuki is qualifying P15. He was having a much better result in that Racing Bulls Honda. Do you still think this is the right move for Red Bull to take to kind of move him up into that seat?
Yes, because it's the logical move, right? You're not competing for a World Drivers Champion, or excuse me, a Constructors Championship this year based upon your first couple of results. Now, obviously, Max puts it on P1, and you want someone who can kind of be the rear gunner for Max when possible. But Liam wasn't anywhere near Max during his 2 race stint there, and at least during practice, Sonoda was right next to Max in terms of pace. I'll give him a kind of respite for now to kind of figure out qualifying and how he needs to set up the car a little bit to maximize his qualifying pace. But he showed during those runs that he has that pace to kind of at least be in the conversation and help him out. So if Red Bull says, we're going to prioritize the drivers' championship and try and get Max's 5th in a row, which is what Christian Horner stated, then it makes the most sense. The only reason that it gives me pause is that Red Bull has made this decision, and they haven't made very many great decisions in the past year and a half as it comes to drivers. So now I'm getting nervous.
Yeah, I'd be nervous for sure. I mean, did Sonoda take a different approach to how he was setting up his car this week versus how Verstappen was?
Yeah, he had, according to the broadcast, he had more rear wing, which is supposed to make him kind of be a little bit more sticky in the turns, give him more traction.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like his thought process on that was there's only one long straight. We only have one DRS zone in Suzuka, and it is coming down that start finish straight. And so he wanted to be comfortable and quick through the turns, which makes sense. It's a very windy course. We know it's the only figure 8 track in F1. Um, and so it made sense the way that he set up the car. It just seems like he didn't quite get enough out of it. And I wonder if it's still that, pointy end and the back end just quite not being in sync for him. So hopefully he can figure that out, where that's why I was so impressed by Verstappen. And as we were talking before we hopped on to the recording, is that Verstappen basically said, I still want the back end to slide around. I'm going to prioritize straight line speed. I don't really care about cornering. And then he goes and he puts it on P1, which, my goodness, quite impressive.
Yeah, they're left with their decisions, right? Like Max, in seeing like the comparisons between the Racing Bulls car versus the Red Bull car, the Racing Bulls car is exponentially faster than the Red Bull car on the straight. So it makes sense as to like why Max would want to do that. He's a guy who loves a lot of downforce going into turns, and he can handle that, and he likes the snappiness of the car and being able to feel that going into the corners. But that's something that, yeah, Yuki's got to have to find that balance. And I think once he does find that balance, he's going to be fine, and he'll be able to kind of keep up with Max and kind of keep that pace and put that second car up towards the top of the grid where he can lend a helping hand out to his teammate. But even overall, too, like mentioning the amount of drivers in our top 10 kind of moving all over the place a little bit. Obviously, Verstappen, he's your champion. That man can drive. He is a dangerous dude. Even in his press conference after qualifying, they said to him, so now that you qualified P1, how do you feel confident in the car? And he's like, how do you think you would feel if I put you in our car? Which to me was just, he's dodging the question a little bit. He still knows there's a ton of issues, but he put together one of the best laps we've ever seen. That is his qualifying lap is the fastest lap recorded on Suzuka. So not just our race, but also our qualifying as well. It's the fastest lap ever, right? So he drove the absolute wheels off of that car. So did Lando Norris, and so did Oscar Piastri. They both beat this record as well, right? That was previously held by Sebastian Vettel when he was with Ferrari. But even these other guys too on the grid, we got some like kind of random outliers in our top 10. So I'm going to point out Charles Leclerc in P4, right? Only Ferrari in the top 7. Right, so he's by his lonesome up there. Max is by his lone self up in first. Got Norris right behind him. Piastri right behind Norris. And then we got some other random outliers other than the 2 Mercedes who are occupying 5 and 6. Which, shout out to them, also a great job. But we see Isaac Hadjar talking about Liam Lawson, right? Tsunoda was right there with Hadjar the whole time, right? Now we also have Lewis Hamilton right after him. He's in P8, right? Albon, Brandon Williams in the top 9. And then you also have a Ox, right? So you have another rookie up there. So we have 3 rookies in the top 10 on the grid for our race tomorrow. Where do you think this kind of puts these rookies compared to these older guys who are kind of struggling to keep up with their teammates and get used to these cars, like our Carlos Sainz and our Lewis Hamilton types of things like that?
Yeah, it makes me wonder if we're almost over amplifying how hard it is to jump into a new car, right? Carlos Sainz, it makes the most sense out of everybody going from a Ferrari to a Williams.
Yeah.
It's, he's going from a motorcycle to a barn. And that I can understand the struggle. Lewis Hamilton is sitting there going from Mercedes to Ferrari. And I'm sure there's obviously differences that you and I are not aware of, but
Right.
overall, it's still one of the better cars. I'd like to see him doing that, but I keep coming back to Liam Lawson, right? He has previously driven the Visa Cash App car, and he gets back in that car. You mentioned Sonoda and Hadjar are pretty close together throughout qualifying in our previous two races. And now Lawson is well off the pace of Hadjar. Hadjar's a rookie. It's his third race ever, and he puts it on P6 while dealing with an issue above his upper thigh and below his waist, as Jacques Villeneuve put it on the broadcast today, which I think we all know where that ends up. But I just sit there and I look at it and go, wow, we have three really great rookies performing. Bortoletto has been given, a rough hand with his car, which is less car and more brick.
He's driving a John Deere tractor out there.
Yeah, and then you got Jack Doohan, who has his massive crash at the beginning of FP2. Thank goodness he's okay. And he comes back. He actually is able to complete some laps in FP3, but I'm sure that's weighing in the back of his mind. Hey, I forgot to turn the DRS off. I probably am going to tiptoe around a little bit. I'm not surprised that he doesn't get out of FP1, but overall, I'm excited because we have a lot of uncertainty throughout the year. After the last year and a half that we had, where it was just, well, Max Verstappen's going to win, and let's see who's 30 seconds behind him. Right now, hey, Verstappen's in first. We got our McLarens. We know are 2 and 3, but we legitimately have no idea what half of the top 10 is going to look like each week. And I mean, that's when things get exciting, right? And you get all these people who maybe you're a little out of position. What does that start look like? How aggressive are you going to be? I think we're in for a great race, and we're in for a great rest of the season if we can keep up this development cycle going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, who is your big winner besides obviously Max Verstappen? Who is your big winner with qualifying?
Ollie Behrman. I think he's done a magnificent job. He's been able to take that car and has been consistently up there, kind of towards the middle of the pack. But compared to, like, his veteran teammate with Esteban Ocon, like, he's being able to be consistent, right? So it is. I love the driver development that you mentioned right there. That these rookies, they're putting on a show, right? That first week, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a long year for these young guys. Like, this is gonna be really rough." But since then, we've only seen improvement from a lot of them, and we've seen more mistakes from a couple more people that are just kind of consistently making these small errors that we're having these issues. And like we mentioned, Jack Doohan, like, that's a driver error. I don't care which side of the Twitter argument you're on, the X argument that you're on, whether it was driver error or not, he was going flat out into that corner, and he didn't close that DRS zone, right? You have to, on this track, you have to be able to close that the brake doesn't do that for you. So when you're going flat out like that, right, that's a simple mistake that you're making. And last week we mentioned the issue with Doohan being, he's got some breath down his neck that he's not going to be, secure in that seat. So these small mistakes are going to add up, and it'll be interesting, to see how he responds to this. Clearly, he's not starting last, right? Because luckily, Lance Stroll's on the grid. So lucky for him, he's not starting at the worst spot. But there's some issues there where you've now had a pretty significant crash. That was an ugly wreck. Like it I'm surprised he was able to say I'm okay right away. To me, that's an immediate concussion. Oh my gosh, like your brain had to be
Yeah.
bouncing all over the place there. So I'm happy. I'm glad, obviously, that he's okay. But these mistakes and leading into his confidence going into this race and this weekend, it's going to be almost impossible to kind of recover from. At least, I'm mentally not. I'm not strong enough to respond from something like that, and I'm sure something like this is also going to affect him as well.
Yeah, it's got to weigh in the back of his mind, and I think Franco Colapinto is definitely, going to be a real discussion point
Yeah.
for the next couple of weeks, unless Doohan starts doing something special in that car. We got to get our weekly Jack Doohan pun in, but
Yep.
it's just you hope that he can figure it out. You don't want to ever see these guys fail. Um, Obviously, he doesn't have the greatest car, but he's just been off the pace the entire time, and I think he's starting to feel that pressure, and it's bearing itself out in his performance.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we can see it. But you mentioned Lance Stroll. One quick trivia question for you. I know we skipped trivia this week just due to our recording schedule, but do you know how many career pole positions Lance Stroll has?
Yeah, he has
I,
one. He's got
yeah,
one.
he's got one. He's got one more than Logan Sargent. So
And look
one
what
of these,
happened to him.
yeah, yeah. But Logan Sargent's dad is not the owner of Aston Martin. So
Yeah, Lawrence, please give me a shot. Let me drive your car. I think I could be your new kid.
yeah. Hey, you know what? For the next year and a half until Max Verstappen most likely ends up there, I think that you and I could fill in almost just as well. Our radio messages wouldn't be as entertaining as Lawrence's, though, or
No.
excuse me, as Lance's. So I enjoy Lance. I like having him on the grid, but I don't want him taking up all those positions. It's so hard to break into Formula One right now as it is, and hopefully with Cadillac we get a little bit more movement with those two more driver spots opening up. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, why are we giving him? This is year 8 now. Why are we giving him so much time? Besides the fact that his dad owns the team. If it was anybody else, he probably wouldn't be in F1 anymore.
Right. Yeah,
So
absolutely. So, I'm with you. I enjoy him. I enjoy his presence. I enjoy his radio comms because they're extremely funny when he just crashes out completely. It's hilarious. So, yeah. But in terms of the competitiveness, you always hear these guys. Oh, we're the top 20 drivers in the world of motorsports, right? Is he a top 20 driver in the world?
no,
No, and I believe he did. It wasn't full on nepotism leading into his place on the grid. That he did show that he has the skills that he needs, but come make some money, Lance, and come to Indy, go to NASCAR. You'd be in the limelight. You'd probably be the best driver out of a lot of those guys.
yeah, and I mean it's got to be hard for him, right? Like he was the Formula 4 champion, um, and then he moved to Formula 3, and he races for Prema, which his dad by that time had already bought a stake in. But I mean, he definitely earned his promotion from Formula 4 to Formula 3.
Mm-hmm.
He ends Formula 3 in I think 5th place. That's good. That's competitive. Um, and then he becomes a Ferrari Driver Academy member and is a test driver for Williams. And then he kind of just moves his way up in 2016. He's shown that he also is like pretty good endurance driver.
Yeah.
He's 5th in the 24 hours of Daytona in 2016. He wins a race in his endurance racing I'm sorry, in Formula 3 for Prema. And, he shows he has a lot of potential. He wins Formula 3 in 2016. And then, he goes to Williams, but it's just like at some point you just don't have it, and we got to move on. So I would love to see him in IndyCar. I think he can do well. He definitely is a racer. He has skill, but let's get somebody else in that seat.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, all right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to do our predictions for Suzuka, including our podium and a little new fun wrinkle we have as well as our best bets and long shot bet of the week.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We are now going to be starting our segment that is going to cover our podium predictions, our best drives, and our best bets. Error there, best bets, not best drives. Okay, take it back. We're still new to this. We're still new to this. And then also our long shot bets of what we are going to be thinking for the race. So we got a race day tomorrow about 2 in the morning for us. So, Steve, what I would like to ask you, let's hear your podium. What podium are you predicting for our race here?
Well, thank you, Ryan. My podium prediction: in third place, Charles Leclerc.
Okay.
In second place, our pole sitter, Max Verstappen. And I am giving the race win to Oscar Piastri.
Okay. Where do you see things mixing up where we're going to see that kind of shuffling there? What is your prediction about what's going to happen?
Well, I don't want to give too much away for my long shot bet, but we do have the 40% chance of rain at the start of the race. I think that's going to jumble some things up. And I don't think that Piastri is going to pass Verstappen on track, but I think they are going to end up passing him due to strategy. And I think he's going to hold on for the win. And I think that Look at Me Lando is going to actually crash out of this race, and people will be looking at him. Try that one on for size.
That's a bold take. Okay,
that's a bold take. That's not even my long shot bet of the week, Ryan. Who do you have for the podium?
I'm going Max. I'm sticking with Max. I think that Red Bull, we know that strategy-wise, they don't really mess up too much. I think there will be some slight error with my bet in the sense that he doesn't really have a teammate up there to help him out as of now. So I'm kind of predicting something similar to you. I think that it'll be a Verstappen 1. I'm going to go with a Piastri 2. And I'm going to go with a Lando Norris 3. I don't think there will be a crash out or anything like that. However, I could see some things happening where, Leclerc maybe sneaks into our podium predictions and everything like that. So I'm not totally disagreeing with you. But, I'd love to see Kimi Antonelli just somehow, take 6 positions in the first lap of the race. But
that would be something. Well, it will be something if you can get this next part correct. This is a slightly new twist or variation on our predictions. We're going to go with last point. So who will get 10th place? That's what we're trying to predict here. Who will get 10th place in the race?
I think P10 will probably go to Pierre Gasly. That's my prediction.
Okay, Pierre Gasly in 10th place. I like that. As I was sitting here thinking about it, I almost went with Gasly. Then I was looking at maybe somebody dropping down, like who doesn't quite belong where they qualified, maybe an Isaac Hadjar. But I'm going to give it to the hometown hero. I am going to say last place. The final point is going to go to Yuki Tsunoda.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of thought that's where you were going to go with things. So, how quickly do you think Yuki passes Liam, since they're right behind each other?
I think he passes him on the first lap, probably by the end of the first turn.
The end of the first turn. Okay.
Yeah, I think he is going to be juiced up. Now he might have a steward's notice by the end of that first lap for jumping the start. But I think that he's going to get a great start tomorrow, especially if it's not raining. And I think we're going to see something special in that first turn from him.
Yeah.
Or boy, do I hope so. I'd look great if I did that.
Yeah, we would really look like we know what we're doing then, right?
Yeah.
I think overall, I think it'll be interesting though. Like with the potential for rain, right? You said 40%, and then maybe around 20% later on. Why don't we just throw that up to 100? I want to see what happens. But we know, like already, Max Verstappen has a pretty solid start. Or or history, I should say, history between him and being in Japan. He has performed rather well in the past couple of years in Japan. And we also, and I'm going to say this, he's the best driver in wet conditions as well. So if that does happen, that's why I'm sticking with him. He's got to be my first place bet. And I think Pierre is also a great driver in the wet conditions. If that does happen, that's how he's going to sneak up there and get that point. I also think that there's going to be some drama. I'm going to predict some drama tomorrow. I think there probably will be an incident on the first lap. I think that there will be some kind of skirmish going on where we're going to see somebody in the top 10 drop out of the race completely. So maybe it'll be Lando Norris, like you say. Maybe it won't be. But I'm not going to go too specific. I'm going to say that, yeah, something's going to happen.
Is that your long shot bet that we're going to have a massive incident on lap 1?
It definitely could be. My long shot bet is that
Yuki... okay. We'll go for it now. Yeah, that's fine.
We'll go for it now. Yuki is going to end up in the top 7 is my long shot bet.
Okay.
I think that just being a hometown race, Yuki is just going to kind of feel that drive. And we've seen that, Max is able to kind of take this car from a later starting point in the grid all the way to the beginning in the past. It's not the same car exactly, but I think Yuki's got it in him, and that'll be my long shot best. I'm gonna say that his best bet would be that he's going to finish in the top 8, but I'm gonna give him P7. That's where I'll throw him at.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll pivot down. My long shot then, in kind of keeping with my theme of what I think is going to happen on that first turn of the race. I think there's going to be at least 3 safety cars, whether that's virtual safety cars or the actual physical safety car coming out. I think we're going to see at least 3 safety cars in this race.
Okay, I love that.
And I think between that and maybe Piastri catches the safety car at the right point in time for a pit stop while Max might be up ahead of the road a little bit is going to give him that tire advantage, and I think that that's how he gets the win.
Love that.
Now, I certainly hope it's right. I won't be betting it, but if you could bet it, maybe throw a coin on it, and you might be able to buy yourself, at least a candy bar by the end of the day, depending on what the stock market does tomorrow. But for our second part of our new twist here, we're also trying to predict last place, or again, the Logan Sargent Memorial placement. So who do you think is going to get last place in the race?
I think Bortoleto. Bortoleto will end up being down there. I'm between Bortoleto and I'm between Stroll. But Lance definitely, and almost if I could go a best bet route, right, like a little early here, best bet Lance finishes in the last 3 places of the race. That's my best bet. If I could do that, but that's a little bogus. But yeah, my last place, I would probably it's gonna be Bortoleto. That's my prediction. I think he has some drivers around him, especially behind him, that are just a little bit more experienced than they do, in my opinion, have better cars. I think the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll, no matter what, is still a better car than that Kick Sauber Ferrari. I also think that having Esteban Ocon right behind you at the beginning of the race is a pretty bad position to be in, and I think he'll probably get passed within that first lap as well. So I think that'll happen. I think Doohan will be down there as well, doing his thing, but we'll see. So what do you see with your last bet? Last place bet?
My last place bet is going to be Jack Doohan. I just think that the writing's on the wall for him. Unfortunately, I would be very surprised if he was able to turn this around and make a go of it tomorrow. I just don't see it going well. I think we're kind of just counting down the days until they say, "Hey, Franco Colapinto, get in the car. Jack, you're out." Unfortunately, but I don't even. I feel bad even making that as my prediction because it seems so obvious to me. So I'm sure he'll end up probably on the podium tomorrow. But that if I had to bet, that's where it would be. Last place, Jack Doohan.
I love that.
All right.
How about your best bet? What do you think is the safest, the best bet that you can make for this weekend?
My number one bet for this weekend is that we are going to see a the gap between first and second place is going to be at least 5.5 seconds.
5.5. Do you remember what
Yeah.
it was last week?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I remember I was so annoyed by, again, F1 TV showing Piastri coming across instead of the race between Russell and um, Norris, and so I couldn't get that out of my head. Um, let's see, I can look it up real quick here.
Okay.
What is your while I'm looking that up? What is your best bet of the week?
I think my best bet of the week is that the top three are gonna just kind of be the same as it is. I think that it'll be a Verstappen, and I think that it'll be two McLarens on the front row. So if you want to make some money on DraftKings, throw that top three in there. My prediction is Verstappen, Piastri, Norris, but it could also stay a Verstappen, Norris, Piastri. I don't think anything's really going to significantly change up there, other than maybe Piastri does get past Norris, and then eventually I think he would get past Verstappen too. If it was the opposite way around, I think the best bet would be that Piastri does get through Norris pretty quickly, and if he had outqualified Lando, I think Piastri probably wins this race, honestly. So we'll see. They are the two best drivers on the grid, but well, yeah. So I think that's a safe bet. I think it's the best bet that you can make, is that top three is going to kind of stay in a similar order as to what it is.
Okay. And just for a frame of reference, the China margin of victory for Oscar Piastri was about 9.5 seconds.
Okay, so you think it'll be a little bit closer, though?
Yeah, I think. Well, I just think that with Verstappen up there battling with the McLarens and it being possibly a wet race, I think that we're going to see a smaller margin of victory. But I think those three will probably separate themselves. Whoever those top three are, and again, I think it's going to be more so Piastri, Verstappen, and Leclerc. I think they're going to pull away from everybody else, but they'll be somewhat competitive in the closing laps of the race. But I think it'll be at least 5.5 seconds.
Yeah, I am excited to see a Red Bull car with some clean air in front of it too. I think that'll be interesting as well.
Yeah, and I mean, and Max getting his elbows out in turn one should be something to behold, since we haven't seen that in a couple weeks. And really trying to hold on for the win. He's got a chance to make a dent in the World Drivers' Championship standings if he can hold on for the win.
Okay, I like that. And if I could just throw something random in there, I'm gonna go Verstappen, Piastri, Norris, Leclerc, Antonelli, and Russell, just because of George Russell's comments about his contract, saying that he's not in a rush to get signed. I don't know if any other team would kind of pick him up later on after that. And he said that, I'm not in a rush. I think, I'm secure in this. I think that that puts a little feel underneath Kimmy's seat to be like, I could also potentially be your driver number 1 too at some point too. And I think that'll, I'm a Kimmy fan, but.
Okay. Yeah. So you're called, I think that's like an exacta or something in horse racing there.
Yeah.
But all right, I won't be betting that one.
Yeah, don't bet that one. Anybody listening, don't bet that one. That's just a bad take by me.
I think it's a great take by you, just maybe not the best investment advice. But I mean, again, you can lose your money betting our takes, or you can lose your money in the stock market right now. It's kind of up to you, dealer's choice at that point. One thing I will bet on, Ryan, is that we'll be back after the race to talk about all the action from Suzuka.
Yes, sir.
I can't wait, buddy.
Yeah, me too.
All right. As always, remember, please follow us on Instagram, on Twitter. I guess now it's X. We had a YouTube page as well. And if you have any questions, comments, anything that you want us to talk about, please email us at the rearwingpod@gmail.com. Ryan, it's been a pleasure.
It's been great, buddy. See everybody after the race.